What's going on YouTube? Cowboy here, and today I'm going to bring you guys a quick video going into the crafting in Dragon Age Inquisition. So in general, the crafting in this game is quite robust. There really is a lot you can do, and you can make some really fucking awesome weapons and armor, especially once you get the hang of it. So if you've never seen this area before, this is called the Undercroft. It's basically your crafting central once you get into Skyhold. If you're still relatively early in the game, you won't have Skyhold, so to access your crafting, you would leave Haven and then cut a left, and it should be right over there. There should be some stands, and you'll see your blacksmith buddy over there. But there are a couple key components we're going to go into today in depth, and hopefully after this you guys can understand how to get everything together and start kicking ass. So we have upgrading potions. We of course have modifying weapons, modifying armor, crafting weapons, and then lastly runes, which are actually located under craft weapons. So, hopping on in, the first thing you're going to see are the schematics you have available. Now, schematics can be found throughout the world in different treasure chests. You can also buy them from certain merchants, and I'd always suggest every time you meet a merchant for the first time, scroll on over to the weapon and armor schematics tab and see what they have available. I know the best armor schematic in the game for both rogue and human warriors is found at a merchant, so never pass up merchants. As for the higher end weapon schematics, I found them in the world in tombs. That being said, there are some good schematics you can get relatively early on. Specifically, looking at this, we have a tier 2 bow schematic right here, Masterwork Ornate Longbow. In a similar fashion, I have the Masterwork Dual Blade Slicer here. Now, basically at your war table, as you level up and you gain influence, you can get Inquisition perks. Well, under the Forces tree, there are 3 specific perks: Rogue schematics, Warrior schematics, and Mage schematics. Each specific set will give you access to armor and weapons that are tier 2 for that specific class. So I'd highly suggest doing this. If you guys caught the walkthrough, you know I use the Masterwork Dual Blade Slicers for probably like 50 or so episodes of it. Like, there just wasn't anything that could compare to these. So if you're having trouble finding schematics, definitely pick up the perks. It'll help you guys out a ton, and it'll definitely make the game significantly easier for you. So that being said, looking at the weapons, you can see there's a couple different things going on. The numbers on the left, they keep, there's colors changing, there's little symbols changing, there's numbers changing, and this all depends on the specifics available for the weapon. So, for an example, using the Masterwork Dual Curved and the Dual Curved Blade, we can see that this one has a damage slot, a masterwork, and 3 utility, whereas this has a damage, a masterwork, a offensive leather, an offensive cloth, and a utility leather. Now in general, every weapon will have a masterwork and damage slot. Every armor will have a masterwork and armor slot. But what's going to change are the other slots available, and depending on what type of slots are on that weapon will determine the type of bonuses you can put on it. So looking at the Dual Curved Blade, for example, to start, we have Masterwork, of course. Now, there's 2 main types of Masterwork. There's Stats Masterwork, which we get with Dragon's Tooth, and there's Ability Masterwork, which we get with FiGhTiNCoWBoy materials. Now, the Stats Masterwork, I'm not a giant fan of. Basically, it's just a 10% boost to all the stats on the weapon, and while it seems nice at first, there are some really powerful things you can get in FiGhTiNCoWBoy materials on the abilities. I mean, especially late game, like I know for a rogue, just for example, a 10% chance to use hidden blades on hit. That's literally hands down like the most broken shit in the game. It makes you so powerful, you can just tear through everything, and 10% bonus to my stats on my weapon isn't going to come remotely close to comparing to that. Now, as you can see, there are quite a bit of different FiGhTiNCoWBoy materials available, and in general, each FiGhTiNCoWBoy material has a random roll between 2 variables, and it is also tiered. Now, what I mean by this is going back down to our plush Fuchsian Velvet. You can see the ability is a 10% chance to use hidden blades with 5 added hits. Going down one to the FiGhTiNCoWBoy Ring Velvet, we can see it's the same ability but with only 4 added hits. We can see Tier 3 Masterwork Cloth, Tier 2 Masterwork Cloth. There's also a Tier 1 Masterwork Cloth that has the same effect but with 3 added hits. But additionally, as I mentioned, there's a random variable roll. So looking at the Ring Velvet in particular, while this one has a chance for hidden blades, this one makes our mana and stamina cost less by 7.5%. Now, Fabework materials in general are highly random. For the cloth and the leather, it'll randomly drop from the mob associated with that. For the velvet, for example, this drops from high-end templars. For the stuff like ore, I've seen it randomly come out of ore. I've also seen it on Inquisition missions where they, you send them in to collect resources. You can also find all this stuff on or in treasure chests sometimes, so keep that in mind. Now, that being said, obviously there is an absolute shit ton, so trying to figure out what exactly you want for your weapon can be a little bit daunting. I know personally I use a combination of the wiki site as well as Reddit. I know the Fextra Life wiki has a full list of all the fade-touched metals, cloths, and leathers, so if there's a specific effect you're looking for, go there and find it. And then once you find the material that you're looking for, you can usually go to Reddit or just use Google and search for that particular material, and then you'll find the best place to farm that material, or whether or not there's a chest that will always have it for you. So, in short, to make your weapon or your armor, first thing you're going to want to do is pick your Fade Touch material. So, we're going to put on Plush Fuchsian Velvet for now. Moving down from there would be your damage. Now, depending on the type of metal you select for your damage, will change both the color of the weapon as well as the damage. And damage is going to come in 4 tiers. 1, 2, 3, and 4, of course. Dragon Bone, being our tier 4 rare metal, will always have the highest damage potential at 341 DPS on daggers. And in general, rare versus common won't make much of a difference in damage, but it will in other applications. What I mean by this is we can see here, Silverite and Stormheart have the same DPS, even though one is rare and one is common. However, we can see their effects in utility, offense, and defensive slots will change. So basically, once you pick your metal, the next thing you're going to do is go into your slots. So looking at this, we can see we have a defensive, a utility, and then an offensive with cloth. So going under the offensive with leather, looking at August Rain Leather as our example, we can see that in a utility slot, it'll give us dexterity. In an offensive, it'll give us flanking damage. And then in a defensive, it'll give us cold bonus. And this is important to note because obviously different things are going to give different bonuses, and they're also tiered. We can see Fennec Fur does, dex critical chance, and it's a tier 1 common leather. Whereas, here we go, Nugskin, that's still tier 1. Let me find a tier 2 with crit. I think I passed one. Crit chance. Here we go. Great Bear Hide, tier 3 common leather. We can see it's the same effects as the Fennec Fur, but obviously being tier 3, we're getting more critical chance out of it. Now, what's important to note about this is, with 2 daggers, this one, like I said, has 2 offensive slots and 1 utility, whereas this one has 3 utility. So when you're crafting your weapons or your armor, you need to pay attention to what type of slots it has available, since that will impact what you can put on it. Additionally, there's certain aspects to each slot. In general, utility slots are always going to be actual stats, like dexterity, cunning, strength, constitution. Your offensive slots are always going to be offensive type qualities, flanking damage bonus, critical chance, critical damage bonus, bleed on hit, armor penetration. And it'll also change per material. While those are offensive slots on leather, offensive with cloth, we can see has heal on kill, barrier damage, critical damage bonus, and attack percent. So, while at first glance you may think that this is going to be great because we can put flanking damage bonus on it, the other thing is we're only going to get 3 utility slots, which is going to give us, at best, 3 cunning and 3 dex out of dragon scales, and then we're going to have to roll with an offensive cloth, which would get us, critical damage bonus or attack percent, versus getting what would be like 11 dex and 11 cunning if we went on Masterwork. So in short, once you've decided what you want, you put it into the weapon. It's pretty simple from there. I don't think I really need to explain it. You drop in what you want on the weapon, and then at that point you just hit Y and craft the item. Now, the same exact thing applies over to armor. So I'll go through armor briefly in a second, but the other important thing to note are weapon enhancements. What I mean by this are the additions you make onto your weapon. So with the daggers, we can see I have grips available. If we go into the great swords, we can see I have pommels and halves, and then greatsword grips. And it's important to know what you're paying attention to, because I know, like with the greatswords, for example, when you pull them up, it says looking for grips, and this says grip, 2-handed grip, but obviously that doesn't look like it's for a greatsword. It's because these are all halves, so you can only use these on maces and axes, whereas the greatswords, you specifically need a greatsword grip schematic. So these work in a similar fashion to the armor. Obviously you can see the type of slot and the type of material. So these are offensive slots with metal. Here's an offensive slot with metal and cloth. Here's a offensive slot, another pommel that has a utility slot and an offensive slot. So depending on the specific schematic is going to change what you can put in. So it's, it's also, once again, important. And not only that, but it's important to pay attention. Taking daggers for the example, we can see we have dual blade dagger grips versus dagger grips, and it's important to realize what you're crafting so you don't craft something for that you can't even use on your weapon. So hopping over into armor, we can see basically the exact same thing that we saw with the weapons. It's going to change the type of slot as well as the type of materials being used in that slot. This also applies down here. Now, once you have crafted your additional items in your armor and whatnot, we would hop over here to modify armor. We'd go to the item. There would be an empty slot. We would hit A, pick what we want to put on, hit Y, and confirm. Now, an important thing to note for both weapons and armor are you can remove these things. So I can see I can remove the upgrades, confirm changes, and then if I wanted to, let's say I wanted to take, I found something that was really good. It was like 40 to magic, which wouldn't happen. But I could go over here and I could replace the arms she has with these arms. We can see I'd be losing the 5 willpower, and instead I'd give her 12 magic defense. And we can also see that changes up how she's going to look aesthetically as well. So just like the specific metal will change the color of your weapon, different materials will also change the actual color of your garb. So you can even get all fashion souls if you want. Now, the one thing you can't remove are runes, which we're going to go into right now. Now, runes are unique in that while everything else can, the schematics for them can be found in chests or on merchants, runes, while a couple schematics can be found in merchants, in general they're going to be hidden throughout the world. And to locate them, you have to have Veilfire. So in short, anytime you see an area where suddenly you can energize a thing and take the little pull out the sconce, and I can't remember, I just forgot the word, but where you're carrying around the little thing of Veilfire. If you're carrying around Veilfire, there's a 90% chance that there is a rune schematic somewhere. And when you find them, you just walk up to them on the wall, and then after that you have the schematic. Runes are actually really simple to make. They all require blank rune stones, which you can buy from quite a few merchants, and they're relatively cheap. And each rune has a very specific material it's going to use. It's pretty simple to figure it out. Fire rune uses fire essence, whereas a master fire rune will use intense fire essence. So the runes have 3 tiers, of course. We have the base tier, the master tier, and then lastly the superb tier. Until you get really late in the game, you're not going to be finding a lot of superb. The master stuff I started finding right around, I guess, level 14, level 15. And, you craft what you want and you put it in your weapon. Now, like I said, the one important thing to note is that while, you could go into a blade and take out whatever you want, you cannot take out runes. So when you put a rune in with the weapon, that rune is consumed, it's gone, and you're not getting it back. So just keep that in mind, and that covers it. So the last thing I want to touch on real fast is potions. Obviously over here you can upgrade your potions, tonics, and grenades. There's a couple cool things you can get in grenades: confusion grenade, healing mist, jar of bees. I haven't really used tonics at all, but these usually enhance combat in some way, such as this one where you're going to poison your weapon. And then of course with potions we have healing, regen, and lyrium, and you can also upgrade the effects on these. So we can see with regen we can increase the duration, healing, life ward, proximity, and this is going to be accomplished through the various herbs that you're going to find in the world. So all in all, crafting is pretty simple once you figure it out. Obviously the hardest thing in my opinion is locating your masterwork materials, and as I mentioned, they can be kind of hard to find since they are random spawns. So if there's a particular one you're looking for, like I say, Google is going to be your best friend. If you're trying to find on guard hit +4, type that in, find out what specific material you need, and then ask around. Either search or go to Reddit, find out where people are having the best luck farming it, and that's about it. So aside from that, it's relatively simple crafting, and like I said, you can do some really badass stuff. I mean, just looking at my rogue in general, I have 10% chance for hidden blades on both my daggers as well as on my armor. So basically, I'm at I have 3 separate 10% chance applications to have hidden blade procs and absolutely slaughter whatever I'm fighting with it. So you can make some really brutal combinations. And obviously, there's a lot of flexibility available as well. So another thing that's important is when you're going to craft your weapon, the stats that are going to be ideal for you are going to change based on how you play your character. What I mean by this is, like, as a rogue, I'm looking to flank 90% of the time, so flanking damage bonus is what's going to get me the best damage possible. Whereas something like a fire mage, for example, would probably benefit more from crit chance, since they have a passive perk that will reduce all their cooldowns every time they crit. So, you know, do a little bit of research, find out what's going to be best for your character, or just craft based on your particular playstyle, and that's about it. You know, there really is a ton you can do with crafting. You guys should have fun with it. So, either way, thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to stay tuned for plenty more Dragon Age Inquisition, and we'll catch you all next time.